Remember, life is a journey, and whether you walk that journey alone or with someone, we all experience unexpected roadblocks and failures along the way. It's not what you do when you fall, it's what you do when you get up. So no matter what life throws at you, always remember, still I rise. On this week's show, our next guest is here to share his story on how one prayer he made to the Lord changed it around for the good. As a child, he was mentally abused by his mother. She told him that men were never good and he would never amount to anything. Those words would later haunt him to make the most regretful decision he has ever made. Assigned male at birth, to later transition to female. That prior led him to detransition back to the gender he was assigned at birth. Please help me welcome my next guest, Daniel. Daniel, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. I'm really appreciative of you making that move to come on this show to help thousands of people, so welcome and thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Ricardo, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so we're gonna just go straight right into it. Daniel, can you tell the viewers, who was Daniel as a child growing up? What was your life like?
On the outside, it appeared really, really kind of normal, Ricardo. I grew up in the southern part of the USA, and I heard my mom and dad fighting when I was like 3 or 4 years old. And my dad divorced my mother. He was a Korean War Marine veteran that got wounded, and he separated from her. And he told me after I got sober years later that the reason he divorced my mother was because of her alcoholism. And she had ended up in a mental health hospital a couple times. And when I was like 4 years old, I remember that she would play with my male genitals when she was bathing me. You know how a child needs the parent to give them the bath? Yeah. And so, Ricardo, I don't know why that came into my mind. And we'll get to it after I had fallen into the belief that having my male genitals removed was going to help me deal with my problems. To make this as brief as possible, the child abuse where she was telling me that masculinity was bad, that men are bad, my father was bad, I would never amount to anything, and males are bad. It put the fear of masculinity into my head, and I was very impressionable at 4 years old. And this went on for a few years, and I recalled it.
So you would say that encouraged your dysphoria, gender dysphoria, the abuse by your mother.
That was the root of it, Ricardo.
Interesting. So when did you feel that you were different? When did you make that decision that you felt like you needed to make that move by transitioning? What sparked that for you?
Okay, around age 8 or 9, I noticed that my sisters got attention from my mother, but my brother and I didn't. And I started what was known as experimental cross-dressing. I would put on my sister's clothes, and while I had on my sister's clothes, I had this fantasy that, oh, well, I'm a girl too, maybe I would get attention. Now, my father was gone because he had remarried another woman, and my mother, she just wasn't really present. I don't know if you've ever been around an active alcoholic, but they're not very present. And so I basically didn't have any parenting. And my sister was basically my mother. So then I started what's called sexualizing this cross-dressing when I hit puberty. But I led a double life. I've heard many transgender people talk about leading a double life. So,
a lot of transgender people feel as if they were born this way. You know, a lot of people really do feel and it all starts at a tender age. Did at any time, apart from the abuse that you suffered from your parents, from your parent, do you ever felt like that at any point given?
Um, for me, the uh, the whole process, I enjoyed doing male things. I never was much about playing with dolls, which I've heard other transgender people say that they've always enjoyed, pink things and being feminine and the effeminate side. Well, that wasn't my nature, but I had this crazy ideation in my head that males were bad. And so that's what led me down that rabbit hole of what happened was I just started burying my feelings with alcohol because I had this friction in my head. The men are bad. And then, oh, well, when I cross dress and I masturbate, I'm in a different world. Okay, this is okay. So,
So it was unresolved trauma you suffered as a child that led you to make the decision in your life later. You know,
yeah.
unfortunately, that's not the case for most transgender people. You know, for a transgender person, it's really, you know, our stories are like all different, you know, and it's very interesting for me too right now to learn what is the root of your dysphoria that you had. So it's very interesting to know that, you know. So I would like for you to speak more about when you finally made that decision to do the transition. Like you've, because a lot of people feel the need to do the transition because they think that will make them feel whole and become the person they're feeling like on the inside. You know, was that ever the case for you?
Hmm. Okay. I started drinking at age 16 and I had many problems with alcohol. Got thrown out of a prestigious boys' school uh, in the eastern part of the US. I barely made it out of high school. Got thrown out of university when I was trying to study. I rebelled, got into drugs, and all I was doing was trying to uh, do something to treat my pain that wasn't resolved, that trauma you mentioned. And so, Ricardo, um, I had struggles with having relationships with women. And so I led that double life. As a male, I would go out and work, and then I would come home, cross dress, and masturbate. And so uh, when I got sober in 1994, I had only had one long-term relationship, and it only lasted a year because um, this woman said that she had got pregnant and that she had had a miscarriage, and I cried. And then I ended up leaving because some other things happened. And so I always had friction in my relationships with females. And so then I got sober and I first tried to transition all the way back in 1995. And
Okay.
uh, it's real important here that I bring this up. Um, the VA, when I was in a small town in the rural South, and this is the Bible Belt, and the people there in that small town were shocked that here is this kind of muscular guy walking around with the high heels and a dress on. And everybody would look at me like, and they'd never seen that before. And a psychiatrist treated me and said that here's some pictures of some men that have had their sex changed. And I looked at the pictures and it just repulsed me. I don't know why I had that reaction, but it's staying with me all these years later. I'm a little bit older, but anyway, the point I want to bring out here is that the very first time I tried to transition, uh, I'm so thankful that God stopped it. If you don't believe in God, there was some power that shifted my thinking to no, this is not the right thing to do and don't do it. Because I remember being in a dress, being on estrogen. I'd started taking estrogen, and I'd already talked to Dr. Stanley Biber, who was the surgeon doing the surgeries back then in Colorado. And he was already ready to go ahead and take my money and put me on the operating room table. And I'd hardly had any counseling. So the
Sorry to cut
system,
you, but I wanted to ask that question. If in those days, did they had you had to do any evaluation before the decision was made or anything like that, or
yeah,
no?
yeah, they had rushed through these standards of care, the Benjamin standards of care or something. And there was, in my case, let me just throw this in there. So from 95, there was a brief period trying to transition until 2004. Um, I stopped the process, and then I continued living as a male, but I still was hiding the cross-dressing, which I actually picked back up not long after I decided to stop the transition process. And so that was that masturbation addiction problem. And this double life is a big part of being transgender. And so at that point, I fell right into that person's blog, reading that they were happy. And I, I believe that there's a higher power and a lower power. And I believe the lower power just sucked me right into that person's blog. And I started the process, and that process culminated in me going to the surgeon's table. And to answer your question, there was very little questioning about my and my psychological counseling I had to go through. The woman admitted to me that she was a lesbian, so I didn't have the very a good therapist working with me as far as having a what do you call it, unbiased opinion.
Yeah, yeah,
she,
you wouldn't have that in that situation.
and then the psychiatrist did, because you had to have two people sign off that you're ready to go for operation for your genitals to be removed. And that psychiatrist said, there's something just not right here. But she signed it off. She said, you're going to go and do what you're going to go and do. And I remember her words still to that day. That was 2005. And then 2006, I flew over to Thailand. And this is really strange, Ricardo, but I believe this is the higher power working. My sister was praying for me. My family members were praying for me. And as I was being wheeled into the operating room, I kept having the thought, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
Okay, so you came to the operating table. You've done the surgery. How did you feel after all that you went through? Like, how was it? Like, what happened after you did it? Did you feel any sense of being whole? Because I'm trying to let people understand what happens after you make the decision.
Okay. For about, when I looked at myself after the surgery, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done to myself? Because my inner thighs were all black and blue, where they had taken the male penis and they had inverted the skin and formed it into a vaginal cavity. And of course, your testicles were removed. And I had never gotten, never in my life, even when I was doing this, did I ever get implants, because I had quite a result from just being on estrogen that I developed the breast tissue. But so I didn't have to have any surgery at the top until the detransition process. But for about 6 months, I was, oh, I don't have to lead the double life. And then I was really, really down because I was struggling. My business, I was having a hard time making a living. I had to get onto government aid to feed myself. And many transgender people end up being on government aid. And it's a very high incidence of suicide. So I feel that what you're doing here and the return to Daniel.com website, and then another ministry called Coming Out Ministries, all of us are sharing just the love of God, the higher power, and not condemning other transgender people, because this is a real problem in the world. Gender dysphoria, people that are not comfortable in their own God-given sex. And so when you come and just share your story, and you don't be judgmental, you just say, this is what happened to me. I went and had surgery, and then I almost killed myself. So,
And I understand that sometimes all we're trying to do is to find, somewhere to belong, and I want anyone that will be watching this video to understand that you can find that in the same person that Daniel find it in, I found it in. We all find that sense of fulfillment, acceptance, joy, and peace in God who created you and each and every one of us. So we're not here to condemn you. We're not here to make you feel as if God does not love you, because that is far from the truth. Because God rescued us when we were in the lifestyle, when we were sinners in the lifestyle. God did not tell us to first detransition and then I can accept you. No, he waited on us. He was patient with us. And I want you to understand that it can be the same for you. Do not be afraid to try. Do not be afraid to open your heart. And that is why we are doing this, for you to be able to understand that there's hope for you too. Amen. Yeah. So
amen.
I must ask you now, Daniel. So what propelled you for change? Like what caused you to make that move to detransition? What was your experience?
Okay, so the gender surgery where I had the male genitalia removed was in November of 2006, and so I'm really thankful that I had some good mental health therapy that I reached out to. In the United States, we have a Veterans Administration, and they have very good mental health care. And I reached out and I said, I'm really struggling. And they did what's known as a wellness check on me. They had a local police officer and a county sheriff where I live. And they came, knocked on my door and said, are you Daniel? Yeah. And do you own a firearm? I said, yes. They said, are you homicidal or suicidal? I said, no. And then they talked to me a few minutes more, and then they determined that I was going to be okay. And I reassured them by telling them that I was in recovery and I was going to go to a 12-step recovery group that night. And I laid out all of my problems in that group, and I didn't drink. The main thing for me, being sustained recovery now, in February, it'll be 28 years. And that's the biggest event in my life, because as long as I don't drink, then all of my other problems are going to get resolved. And so the drinking was the symptom, but the root problem was I just did not know who I was, and I had that trauma. And so I've been treated. And so I lived from 2006 until 2016. So for 10 years, I tried to function, walking around. At first, I did the jewelry, the makeup, the whole thing, my hair. I had longer hair, of course, but walked around in high heels and a dress. And then over time, in 2004, I had started reading the Bible, because I knew that I had a whole bunch of weird things going on that was like uncomfortable. And my father had said, your decision, I just don't agree with it. And so my whole family had separated from me. And then in 2014, I had been reading the Bible, and I moved and I joined this church, and they had, Ricardo, what's known as discipleship training. And I started learning about how to get out of myself and learn how to share the higher power with other people. And I believe this is how God started my healing journey. And in 2016, I was on my knees one morning. I need to throw this in there. I had a strong attraction. I have never been what's known as same-sex attracted. In other words, males have never done anything for me. What do you call it? As far as the attraction, um, I've always been attracted to females and their body. And before 2004, when I had started on hormones, if I saw a beautiful woman, I would get an erection. And so in 2014, I had started walking with one of these women that was in that church, and she had been divorced, and she became my friend, and I had a strong attraction to her. And so I was like, oh God. And I went to the VA mental health care again and said, I made a tragic mistake. I said, I'm attracted to this woman. And then there was another woman that I became fond of in another group. And I said to my therapist, I said, now I've got two women I'm attracted to. What do I do? And then I admitted I made a horrible mistake. I cut off my male members, and they don't want to have anything to do with me because they're looking for a male, not a male that's had their genitals removed. And so I cried out to God on the morning of the 12th of May, 2016. And I said, God, help me. And I cried like a baby, Ricardo. And a thunderbolt came, and I started shaking. And the verse in the scriptures that really hit me was 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 22. And that verse, Ricardo, says, abstain from the appearance of evil. In the context, the Apostle Paul, who wrote quite a few books in the New Testament, he was writing to the Thessalonians that people were appearing evil. There was a lot of evil doing going on. He said, abstain from the appearance of evil. And God said to me, you are walking around appearing as a female, and I created you a male. And I said, wow. And I said, I've got to do something. I was shaken. I was scared to death. I emailed my pastor. Then I emailed my friends in my 12-step recovery groups. And the help that came to me, Ricardo, was like incredible how fast God healed me.
You see, so there's nothing that God cannot do. And I am so moved by how, how he opened your eyes. He's such a loving father, because not that he only opened your eyes, he made you realize that yes, you were attracted to women. So that was, I made you that way, and it's just mind blowing how you said you were attracted to one and another, and then you're like, oh no, the light bulb turns on, and that's when you cried out to God. You cried out to God, and this is how He responds to you. So this is how God works. I'm blown by it. I'm really, really happy for you, Daniel, that you were able to find yourself, to figure out who you are, and to just take your life from what it was, because we're all searching for that sense of being, acceptance. Who are we? Like, what are we? What we should be doing, and you can only find that in Christ. And I don't care what the world thinks or what a person might think I'm saying is profound, but it is the truth. It is the fact. If you really don't know who you are right now, no matter who you are, you don't have to be a dysphoria gender situation. If you do not know who you are, you're unsure of who you are, just cry out to the Lord, and He will reveal to you who you are. So I'm really happy that He did that for you.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you now, did you ever see that in your life? Did you see that you would have now a wife? Did you see that for yourself?
That was just a blessing. I remember that day, I mentioned I was full of fear, because God was calling me to reverse all of the process of transition, and it's called detransition. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to do government paperwork, get the name changed. And I mean, it's expensive, and the surgeries to get your male genitals restored are much more expensive. It's a much more complicated process. But I said, okay, God, I'm going to listen. And I believe because I listened and I responded, I got blessed. And there's something else that's important here. Just how fast the process changed was God showing me that it was Him that orchestrated it all. I went the very next day because the first day I wanted this one woman that was a friend of mine in a women's only support group. I said, come and get all of these women's clothes. And some men from the church came and brought me some male clothes. And I had some expensive women's clothes. And so they were over there getting those clothes fast. and so anyway, then I went and I got my hair cut, kind of similar to this. And so I actually, on returntodaniel.com, I created a post, the 12 steps that I did to, and I see you've gotten your haircut too.
Yeah, because before I had, it's so interesting when I hear your story and how the Lord did what he did and made that turn in your life. It just brings me back to like memories, because how he did it in my life, I've never seen anything happen so fast because I've just turned my life over to the Lord just 8 months ago. My journey started in 2020, but I really decided to really obey him fully and just said, you know what, this is your will. That's what you said I need to do. No more questioning it, no more fighting it. And I said, okay, then once I said that and I came in agreement with him, I got everything done immediately, quickly the following week. Then I started with the hair process, then the Lord says, yes, I want you to cut it. Why are you holding on to it? Cut it. Do everything I tell you to do and you'll be fine. And here I am today. Okay, I thought I could never, I didn't know that I could be able to really let go of who I used to be because that's all I ever know, that's all I've ever believed I could be. So I'm really excited to see that, the Lord looks out for his children. All we have to really do is just to obey him. That's it, and he will do the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I got the breast tissue removed. So it was in May of 16 that the lightning bolt came from heaven. When I prayed, I was crying, I was miserable. And that's what I want to appeal to anybody that's struggling. Just cry out to God, talk to God as a friend. Even if you don't believe he's there, just start talking to him like he's a friend and say, I need help. And the help is going to come. It's going to come through people, but it's going to come. And then, so the breast tissue got removed not just 2 months later in July of 16. And then my family welcomed me back. My sister was ecstatic. She came to my baptism because I got rebaptized in my birth name at my church. And my sister said she wouldn't have missed that for the world. And then the whole process of searching out a surgeon. Now, it's very difficult for people in the USA. In my experience, now it might not be yours. If you're wanting to detransition, the surgeons here didn't want to touch me. So I had to go to Europe. But anyway, getting back to the point of what we're doing here today is that if you're sick of trying to walk around, for me, here I am, a muscular man, trying to walk around in the world as a female. And female's nature is a loving nurture. They're going to go solve problems. Oh, this older person, they need help. They can't take care of themselves. They're going to go and help them. And whereas the male is the hunter-gatherer and their instincts are different, and that's the way God made me. And so I don't have that loving, compassionate nature side, the nurture side that my wife does. But I have what we need in our marriage to go out and provide and gather. And so anyway, that's what I kind of wanted to touch on. And the speed, I mean, I got my passport back in 2 weeks when it said male again with my birth name. 2 weeks. That was fast. And I didn't pay for expedite.
That's how good the Lord is. So Danielle, I want you to for someone who is considering doing the surgery, what advice would you give to somebody who is planning to do the surgery?
Okay. If you're either side of this equation, because I've had biological females write to me, Ricardo, and say that they have seen some of my videos and they said, it's just not worth it. And one woman said that she's going to seek God and she's going to seek a male and live out her fantasy of the masculine image through her husband. And I praise God for that. And the other one is if you're a biological male and you're considering having your male genitals removed, it's a horribly risky surgery. I know one person, I used to belong to a transgender support group, and this one woman that had surgery before I did, they actually went into surgery, and when they created the vaginal canal, they busted all the way through to her anus. So she was hospitalized a long time. And so it's horribly risky. You know, I would get mental health therapy, reveal any childhood traumas, reveal anything that might have started your ideology of liking things pink if you're a male, liking to play with dolls. You know, I understand, Ricardo, that there is a study in one of the Scandinavian countries that over 95% of children, when they have this issue, by the time they're 18 to 20 years old, they resolve it. They're happy with their birth sex, their biological sex. So I think it's a tragedy that children are indoctrinated at such a young age, and some of them even being put on, what do you call it, hormone blocking medicine, puberty blocking medicine. This is a child abuse. It's a tragedy. You need to let that child grow up just the way that they came out of their mother's womb. And so, yeah, I would say get the best mental health therapy you can, and don't hide anything, because the surgeries are very painful, they're very risky, and they're very expensive.
So there you have it, guys. Danielle, can you tell people where they can find you if they are looking for some sort of advice or anything from you? Where can they find you?
Okay, just write me at daniel@returntodaniel.com. And the other thing is if anybody is interested in a detransition support group, and I think that the other members of this group we're starting up would probably welcome anyone that has not transitioned, and they've heard these messages that you're producing and that I've produced and other people have produced, as an encouragement to, you know, maybe they started on female hormones and they're going to have to detransition some by having breast tissue removed. So I think we should make this group available to any, kind of keep it focused to males probably, because it would get a little bit hard if we started throwing in the females that are going back to being females. But anyway, I'll leave that up to the group conscience, which is the best way. So that's how they can reach me, Ricardo. We also have a support group if you want to detransition.
So there you have it, guys. If you feel the need that you want to have some help mentally, you can reach out to Daniel or you can reach out to me. You know, we're here to support you. We're here to give you whatever you need that we can offer to you, you know. So don't be afraid to reach out to us, you know. And I'm really thankful for your story, Daniel. I'm sure it will impact a whole lot of people, and I'm just grateful for it. You know, before I end, I would like for you to tell, what would you want people to take away from this whole interview? What would you want people to take away from it?
Yes, that we're all created. That the earth was here before we came out of our mother's womb, and so we're all given a certain amount of time. And then more than likely, unless something tragic happens, when we go to sleep and our days are through, the earth's still going to be here. So there's some kind of power that did all that. And, you know, that's got to be a power greater than ourselves. So I believe that has to be the door opener for anybody that has a problem. Many people, Ricardo, are abused by so-called Christians. And I've heard many people say that, you know, they struggle with the God thing. And this, how about this? Good orderly direction. And I believe that God's given that to you. He's given that to me. And so when you asked me to do this, I said, to be able to try and help people in Europe or wherever you're, Jamaica or wherever your viewers are, So I said, sure. So that would be the big concept, that there's got to be something bigger than us, that I'm sure that God is weeping for every single person that struggles with gender dysphoria. And he wants you to find yourself. That's what I would, the takeaway.
So there you have it, guys. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Thank you, Danielle, for being a part of this show. And I'm really appreciative of the Lord for bringing forth what He wants us to do in the earth for His kingdom. Thank you, Father. And I just want to thank you, viewers. I ask that you please to like, subscribe, and recommend this video if it has blessed you, or if you know someone that it can be a blessing to. So thank you for watching, and tuning next week for another episode of Still I Rise. Thank you.
Some of your viewers may not know, I'm not a man, I'm not a woman. I know it's confusing, but I know it's completely confusing. Then I was like, my breasts make me uncomfortable, so I must be a man. So I was like, okay, I'm a man. I went that way for a while. Then I realized I made a wrong decision with the testosterone and removing my breasts. And I was like, okay, I'm non-binary, because I wasn't ready to be like, oh, I made a huge mistake. Like, this was incorrect.
You're not ready to face the reality that was approaching you. So you fed yourself lies. Like and subscribe to this channel so that you can stay in tune with what God is doing in the earth. I ask you that you turn on your notification bell so